We're going to talk some wide receiver money on today's episode. This is a little follow-up from the previous episode on the receivers where I stated the money was coming. Now, there have been some wide receiver extensions this offseason that seem to surprise people in terms of the guaranteed money and the average annual value. And I see the commentary online. I listen to a lot of football and just sports pods in general where they're talking about the player and is it worth it, etc. First off, and if this sounds like an I told you so, it's because it is, none of these deals signed so far have been surprising. I stated back in March, before free agency, that a massive amount of money was on its way for the wide receivers drafted in those 2020 and 2021 classes. So now that we've seen some of those announced over the past few months, you can understand why I said $1 billion was on the way for these guys. Collectively, obviously. And we're still not through that full list yet, right? We're waiting on the very top of that list. CeeDee Lamb and Ja'Marr Chase are still pending. And then you still have T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk who are looking to get paid as well. But let's dive into some of those extensions we've seen thus far, and I will try to frame up why, one, these are not surprising, and two, explain why this works for both the team and player. Now, just real quick, these are the total values. Justin Jefferson, 4 years, $140 million. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4 years, $120. Michael Pittman, 3 years, $70. Devontae Smith, 3 years, $75. Nico Collins, 3 for $72.8. Jalen Waddle, 3 for just under $85. And Jerry Jeudy, 3 years, $52.5 million. Now, we can get into the different types of guarantees and what that means on a different episode. I think there's still just a general misunderstanding among fans of the actual money involved in these contracts and what it means for the overall roster construct. But a big part of that is also the inconsistencies between media outlets with how these things are reported. But again, I digress. So looking at those players I just mentioned, with the exception of Jefferson and Jeudy, they're all in that per year range of about $25 million plus. Now that may seem like a lot to pay a wide receiver, but if you've been following where we're at with the salary cap these past few seasons and the numbers we're seeing players at other positions hit, this is simply market value. I don't know how else to say it. It's like anything. The value of any good or service is what someone is willing to pay for it. And in the NFL, where all 32 teams are limited to the same max spending limit when it comes to the players, part of what factors into that market value is the position you play. And in 2024, where we are very much in an offensive-oriented passing league, the salary cap allocation follows suit. It's why the quarterbacks are getting paid $50 million per year, followed by wide receivers and left tackles. Just look at the defensive side of the ball. Who's getting paid? Defensive ends and corners. Guys who rush the passer and cover the pass catchers. And some linebackers with range who can drop in coverage and be effective against the pass, right? Like a Fred Warner. So this really isn't a new concept. I think it's more so just a combination of there happens to be a pretty large receiver group that entered the league with similar timing. And as the cap goes up, so do the contracts. And people simply aren't accustomed to seeing wide receiver money in that $25 to $30 million per year range. But it's all relative, and it's been on this trajectory for a few seasons now. I would point to the 2022 offseason as the, for lack of a better term, the accelerator on the wide receiver contracts. You had 3 high-profile, high-performing players traded in a single offseason. By the way, I doubt we'll ever see that again, but when you look back to Davante Adams going from the Packers to the Raiders, Tyreek Hill traded from Kansas City to Miami, and then the draft night blockbuster of A.J. Brown going from the Titans to the Eagles, those guys all got new contracts. And all 3 have had massive production in their first 2 seasons with their new teams. Now, I know the Raiders, as a team, have not realized much success these past 2 seasons. But Davante Adams is catching 100 balls and scoring 10 touchdowns a season for them. He got 5 years, $140 million back in 2022. A.J. Brown signed for 4 years, $100 million with Philadelphia, and just signed another extension this offseason at 3 for $96. Tyreek Hill was at 4 years, $120 million, or I should say still is on that contract with Miami. So those guys were the ones to really pull the wide receiver market up to that $30-ish million range. And now that we are seeing this next group due for their extensions, they are signing for, relative to their position and production levels, fair market value. And the reason I say it's a win-win for both team and player is because of the way NFL contracts are structured. This is not the NBA or Major League Baseball where the deals are fully guaranteed. In those sports, as soon as the ink dries, whatever amount was agreed to, that is how much that player will be paid by the team, whether they lead the team to championships or if they absolutely suck. In the NFL, you have signing bonuses and roster bonuses and workout bonuses, base salaries, statistical incentives. You get the point. So the salary cap hit can be manipulated in a way that makes it both favorable to the team and player. What you pay player X in real dollars is not what that particular player counts against the salary cap in a given year. So if I'm a player and I sign an extension, I am getting paid a boatload of cash up front, but the team does not have to charge whatever that amount is against the cap in full that particular season. Now, there are rules and limitations as far as how a team can spread that cap charge out over multiple seasons, but the point I'm making is the player gets his money, so he's happy, and the team gets flexibility with the cap charge. And as the cap continues to go up year to year, that favors the team, as market value for the same production of player X is only going to increase. NFL contracts are all about precedent. This guy got this much money, his production is relative to this other guy, and that guy got that much money, and so on and so forth. It's why the draft is such a big deal. Look, I'll be the first to say I'm just not really in on all the hype around the draft, in terms of the media coverage, especially mock drafts. Feels like everyone has a mock draft and they release 17 different versions. I'm more just tell me who picked which players. But regardless of whether you are into the media circus or not, the draft absolutely has a massive impact on roster construction and a team's chances for success. Think of it this way. We just talked about those wide receivers coming in at 25 to 30 million per season. If you draft a wide receiver that is on the same level of those guys, it would come in at a fraction of the price in terms of the salary cap. Marvin Harrison Jr. was the first wide receiver off the board this year at number 4 to the Cardinals. His draft position slots in just over $35 million guaranteed over 4 years. So let's round that up and call it $9 million per year for the first 4 years. Well, you could say that math is upside down. It's a no-brainer. Why not just draft new guys who make a lot less money? Here's the problem. Nobody, not me, not you, not an NFL GM, coaches, scouts, you name it, nobody can say with 100% certainty what a guy is going to become when he actually gets to the league. Amon-Ra St. Brown, in 3 seasons, has caught 315 passes for over 3,500 yards, and he has 22 touchdowns. If Detroit knew with absolute certainty that was the player he was going to become, they would have drafted him in the first round. Hell, maybe they would have even traded up to get him. Do you know where he was actually selected? 112th overall, 4th round. Do you know who wasn't drafted 112th overall? How about Jalen Reagor, N'Keal Harry, Kadarius Toney, John Ross, just to name a few? What do those guys have in common? They were all first-round picks. So you see, it's not as simple as just selecting the next guy out of college and replacing the production. And that's why you see these teams ponying up the cash. While you have to pay up when it comes to extensions and signing guys in free agency, the justification is you know who that player is. You've seen them do it over multiple years at the NFL level. And while it's no guarantee that they are going to have sustained success, the chance of success significantly exceeds picking a player in the first round and hoping they become a Pro Bowl caliber player. So we'll see how this plays out for some of those other guys. I expect to see, receive a big contract. Ayuk, Chase, CeeDee Lamb. But whenever those deals eventually happen, expect big money.